This message is brought to you by Wonder Wellness Cannabis Gummies. Where is your journey to wellness taking you today? Wonder offers the convenience of effects-forward, low-dose gummies to take you there. Relax, laugh, or focus. It's your choice. It's cannabis in control. Discover the wonder of cannabis and wellness. Visit us at wonderwellness.co. These products are intended for persons 21 plus in Illinois. Individual experiences may vary.
Joining us right now on the Beacon Plumbing Hotline, excited to have Stuart Mandel on. He is the editor-in-chief for the Athletics college football coverage, and he joins us, and I know it's a really busy day. And Stuart, I really thank you for carving out some time out here in the Northwest for us. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We're really good. We saw it. We've been talking about it on the radio, trying to digest in real time what the alliance means today between the Pac-12, Big Ten, and ACC, the three commissioners meeting. I'll just kind of open it up to you. What was your read on what they came up with today?
Well, they didn't come up with much of anything specific. That seems to be something they're going to do further down the road. But I think the two most important takeaways are this. These three conferences, I think, are unified in wanting to slow down college football playoff expansion. I do think that they are generally on board with an expanded playoff, but they also see the business sense of waiting until 2026 until you can take the contract to the open market and possibly have multiple networks involved rather than ripping it up early, but ESPN gets to keep it. This gives them, not that they couldn't have individually stopped it before, but now you've got three that share that viewpoint. And then the potential scheduling implications are obviously very interesting. And two of the commissioners, Kevin Warren and George Kliavkoff, essentially said that this could stabilize things for them, and that they can, instead of having to actually expand and add new members and all the chaos that would create, they can, in a much less radical way, create more compelling games by having the teams from their conferences play each other more frequently out of conference. The only issue there is that they also have said they don't want to have to rip up contracts that are already on the books for non-conference games, and most of these schools have scheduled out well into the future.
Stuart Mandel joining us from The Athletic. I'm going to come back to the scheduling in a second, because I think that's really, from a fan standpoint out, especially out in the Northwest out here for us, I think that's one of the most interesting parts. As far as the symbolism involved here, is there also a reality that by coming together, there maybe is the potential to alleviate any concern there might have been about, the cannibalization of members from other conferences, like we just saw with the SEC basically destroying the Big 12, taking Texas and Oklahoma? In other words, does this take off the table in your mind, at least in the immediate future, say a USC or an Oregon being courted by the Big 10 or Clemson by the Big 10 or what have you?
Well, they came out and claimed that this is sort of a gentleman's agreement and such on, but they also said there's no signed contract. There's nothing prohibiting any of them from expanding further. So it may mean that it may be a signal that there's no immediate plans for this conference to expand, although I will say that on a follow-up call with The Athletic, George Kliavkoff, the Pac-12 commissioner, said they're going to announce by the end of the week whether or not they are expanding. So we will stay tuned for that. But I don't think I think, to what you said, it may stabilize things here in the short term. But if 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the USC is unhappy and they call up the ACC or they call up the Big Ten, I don't think this gentleman's agreement prevents that from happening.
Yes, Stuart, I saw in your story in The Athletic, theathletic.com, and again, we excited to have Stuart on with us today, and we do so much with folks with The Athletic. We encourage you to subscribe to it. It's great coverage for everything, especially college football. You said in there, or I guess might have been Kliavkoff told you, that maybe he didn't say this, but they think, or we think, that most of the remaining Big 12 teams, right, Baylor, Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, TCU, Texas Tech, West Virginia, all reached out to the Pac-12 after Oklahoma and Texas left?
No, and first of all, he didn't say that. That was just me writing the words.
Okay.
From what I actually toned that down from the original version. I do know that several of the Big 12 schools reached out. I think it might be unfair to say most or all, but those schools are looking for a life preserver at this point. And this alliance was kind of further another humbling moment in terms of first Texas and Oklahoma leave them. And then it sure appears that the strategy here does not involve picking up new schools. And they're very frustrated, those schools, because a lot of them have been very good at football. And they're hearing people like myself tell them, sorry, you don't bring enough value from a TV perspective. It's not, it's just, they're just in an unfortunate position. And we could say that in any of the conferences. If USC and Oregon left the Pac-12, Oregon State and Washington State and some others would probably be in the same exact boat. But the Pac-12 to me has always been more stable, whereas the Big 12, basically from its inception, was always kind of an awkward marriage between originally Texas and Nebraska and Oklahoma, and it's gone through obviously many incarnations since then.
Kind of always felt, Stuart, like in the Pac-12, the teams. And maybe I'm wrong here, and I'm just speculating, and I'm not sure if you would agree or disagree, but I've always kind of thought that it felt like the teams would take care of each other, or even in the case of some, their little brother. Oregon not going to leave Oregon State, or USC is not going to leave the other three Pac-12 schools in California high and dry, Washington State. I don't know if there's that type of loyalty or not. I was in Utah for a while. I saw Utah and BYU have had kind of an acrimonious relationship ever since Utah left to go to the Pac-12. So I don't know if that's the case or not, but it kind of feels like the Pac-12, better than other conferences, takes care of each other.
I think that it's hard to picture, Oklahoma just left Oklahoma State hanging high and dry. Mm-hmm. And you're right. It's hard for me to picture Oregon doing that to Oregon State or Washington doing that to Washington State. It's just a different culture out here. You'd like to think it's not quite so cutthroat. Now, if the economics change so much so that they feel like they have to do that, or in other words, if the Pac-12 were to fall further and further and further behind financially, and somebody was willing to, somebody from the Big Ten, for instance, was willing to bring them in and double their annual revenue or something like that, maybe they feel they have no choice. But that does not in keeping with the traditional spirit of the Pac-12.
Is Stuart Mandel joining us from The Athletic. Stuart, you mentioned the scheduling, and we see scheduling done like a decade in advance sometimes in college football. One of the challenges, though, the Big Ten and the Pac-12 both play, 9-game schedules, conference schedules. So to add something to that, do you think there's an appetite for either one of those conferences to drop down to an 8-conference game schedule?
I think that's where it's headed. I don't know how soon. But if the goal is to have, for instance, Ohio State play every year, play like one, they're playing Oregon this year, but let's say they were playing Oregon and Clemson, right, or Oregon and Florida State, then probably you're going to take one conference game off the table, if for no other reason than to just give them the flexibility to do that. And then I also know that since he took over, George Kliavkoff has said repeatedly that they want to, unlike his predecessor, they want to make decisions that make it easier for them to get teams in the playoff. And if you're asking a Pac-12 coach, 9 conference games has been one, it's not the only reason, but it's certainly been a contributing factor to why they have struggled to make the playoffs. So I think they would actually welcome moving from 9 back to 8.
I still agree, though. We just close our eyes and think about Oregon going down to the desert and losing at Arizona State, or Washington losing a game to Stanford or Cal or something along. It just happens every year. That 9th game, it feels like, Stuart, out here, at least to us, it feels like it's always that 9th game that comes back to bite you. It's not in your division; it's the other team, and the goal is to get to the college football playoff. Is it not, for all these commissioners?
Right, and even if it goes to 12, and chances are in that model, the Pac-12 is going to have a team in there. They're going to have their champion there every year. But then the goal becomes to get more teams in, to get a second team in. And obviously when you play 9 conference games, you're ensuring that half your teams take an extra loss. Obviously, the same effect could happen by giving your schools tougher non-conference schedules, but you're not guaranteeing losses. Now, the funny thing in all this is that I think the SEC, now that they're at 16 teams, is going to go to 9 conference games finally. So in college football, only in college football, the league that resisted will finally do it, and then right around the same time, 2 of them will go down to 8.
I've got 2 more quick ones for you, Stuart. And one would be this: Do you think that the SEC is going to be left out in terms of non-conference games with these 3 power conferences down the road?
No, they said on the call today there would be nothing precluding their schools from scheduling teams from other conferences. Now, and Ohio State might say, hey, if we already have to play one Pac-12 and one ACC team, we don't want to add an SEC team as well. But I will say, if you look at the SEC schedules, the SEC has long been the one that everybody's made fun of for their scheduling, and it's reversing itself. Georgia has some schedules in the future where they play 3 Power 5 games out of conference. Between declining attendance in college football, which has been declining for some time, and obviously everybody trying to make more and more TV money, it wouldn't surprise me if the future of a college football schedule is you actually play 11 Power 5, however that, whatever that, 9 versus 2 or 8 versus 3, and then 1 guarantee game, rather than what we've kind of come to expect for years and years, is that it's more like you play 1 marquee game and 3 guarantee games.
Interesting stuff. Stuart, my final thing for you. What's your impressions as someone who's covered the sport and does a terrific job with it of George Kliavkoff so far?
He's been very interesting because he speaks like a college sports fan. You know, when I was on these Zoom calls today with the 3 of them, Kevin Warren and Jim Phillips talk very much academic-minded, ivory tower kind of language that we've come to expect from commissioners. And George talks like if I were talking about college football, right? So
yeah.
He's also not afraid to be direct with us in the media in terms of, you know, he kind of dropped it unsolicited, this nugget that they're going to decide on expansion this week. Now, does any of that mean he's going to be a great commissioner? Time will tell. But I do think the one big concern people had when he started is, oh no, they're doing exactly what they did with Larry Scott and hiring somebody with no previous college sports experience. I feel that is different in terms of Larry Scott came from a tennis background. He never seemed to me to be all that passionate about college football.
Yeah.
George Kliavkoff definitely is.
I would totally agree. I think that's the biggest difference right there. He's got a passion for the most important sport in college athletics, and that is college football. Stuart, thank you so much. I know you're busy today. I appreciate it. Stuart Mandel, Nicole Auerbach, and others for The Athletic, writing some great stuff out there, theathletic.com, if you want to follow them there. And we'll talk to you on the road, man. Thank you.
This message is brought to you by Wonder Wellness Cannabis Gummies. Where is your journey to wellness taking you today? Wonder offers the convenience of effects-forward, low-dose gummies to take you there. Relax, laugh, or focus. It's your choice. It's cannabis in control. Discover the wonder of cannabis and wellness. Visit us at wonderwellness.co. These products are intended for persons 21 plus in Illinois. Individual experiences may vary.